Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Cakeness Amateur Dram Antiques Society tasting. And tonight, and for the next two or three tastings, I'm going to go through something a little bit different. When you speak to whiskey drinkers uh, who are maybe more casual rather than connoisseurs, a lot of them reflect that, in their opinion, whiskey of the past is or was better than whiskey today. And by that, I think they're referring to distillery flagship releases. And I managed to get five samples of five distilleries. Flagship whiskies from the last couple of decades that have been discontinued, and I'm going to compare them to whiskey that is now the distillery's flagship, or the perhaps the first whiskey in their core range presently, and it's going to be sort of a distillery that now and then to compare and contrast what was then and what is now, and to give a sort of opinion whether then is better than now or vice versa. And I'm going to start this off with Glen Ord, now and then, or then and now. And I've got Glen Ord 12-year-old 43%, which was produced up until the mid 2010s, I think, and then of course it was replaced by the Singleton of Glen Ord, and I'm going to compare the Glen Ord 12-year-old from back then to the Singleton of Glen Ord 12-year-old of now. The old one was 43%, the new one is 40%. Now, in these tastings, I'm not usually going to go into much detail about the history of the distillery, maybe a little bit about whiskey that we're going to taste, but I'm going to give a history of Glen Ord because it's not a whiskey that you come across a lot of. I do have a couple of Cadenhead independent bottlings that I'll taste in the near future, but I wanted to sort of fill in a gap there in my knowledge and perhaps your knowledge. I have visited Glen Ord Distillery in Muir of Ord, and it's huge, and it does the malting for Diageo. There's a maltings at Glen Ord. It has vast warehouses. When I did the tour, I think it would be 2022. I was surprised in the warehouse to see casks of Mortlach sitting maturing in the warehouse, and I queried this, and it's just because Glen Ord has such big warehouse space. They take whiskey in barrels from other Diageo distilleries and mature it there. And it troubled me a little because part of the romantic in me always thinks for a bottle of whiskey, a single malt Scotch, to be completely authentic, it does help if it's been matured on site at the distillery that produced the whiskey. So yeah, that's maybe a negative on Diageo. So Glen Ord, Thomas Mackenzie founded Glen Ord Distillery in 1838, and the Clan Mackenzie has featured heavily in the history and development of the Glen Ord Distillery. King Alexander III of Scotland granted the land on which the distillery sits, which Thomas Mackenzie inherited, to the Mackenzies family as early as 1263. Thomas Mackenzie licensed the distillery to Ord Distillery Company. The ownership of the distillery passed to Robert Johnston and D. McLennan, and a few years into production, Johnston took complete control of the distillery. But he soon ran into financial difficulties, and in 1847 he went bankrupt and Glen Ord was put up for sale. The distillery lay silent until 1855, when Alexander McLennan and Thomas McGregor purchased it, and production of the distillery resumed successfully, and McLennan's widow assumed the management of the distillery after his death in 1870. In 1877, fate intervened in the history of Glen Ord, as it passed back to the Mackenzie clan through the remarriage of McLennan's widow to Alexander Mackenzie. Sadly, soon after their marriage, much of the distillery was destroyed in a fire. Alexander Mackenzie died in 1896. Glen Ord was sold to James Watson and Company in 1923. Glen Ord changed hands again, this time to Dewars, making the beginning of the use of their single malt in the Dewars blend. Glen Ord survived a series of other mergers, eventually landing in the possession of DCL. In 1966, the distillery was renovated and expanded, with the number of stills increasing from 2 to 6. And then in 1985, Glen Ord was acquired by United Distillers and Vintners, who became part of Diageo a decade after that. And Glen Ord is Diageo's 4th largest distillery in Scotland. Its production capacity sits at a very impressive 5 million litres per year. And the water used in the process is drawn from Loch Nam Barnach and Loch Nam Ewan. Since the expansion, production of Glen Ord has been split in two, so to speak. The first mash tun, with a capacity of 12.5 tonnes, was joined by another. And while the 2 mash tuns are still in the same building, the resulting mashes are then split, one going through the old production process and one going through the new production process. The new production area has 12 washbacks and a capacity of 58,000 litres, with the clear wort and the addition of liquid yeast. A light grassy and floral wash is created, which is distilled in the 8 new stills. In the old production area, there are still 10 washbacks and the 6 old stills. And this double track production process works well, and the resulting new make spirits are identical. So Glen Ord's 6 pot stills are the driving force of the distillery. The still room is fitted with 3 wash stills and 3 spirit stills. The 3 wash stills each have a capacity of 17,000 litres, while the spirit stills have a slightly smaller capacity of 16,000 litres. The wash stills are pear-shaped, being shorter than your average still, with a very broad tapering neck and wide spherical lid. The spirit stills have a flat pear shape with a wide spherical lid, like a normal pear-shaped still, but with a flat top. The new still house, added in 2015, houses 8 more stills, 4 wash, 16,000 litres each, and 4 spirit stills, 14,000 litres each, which have the same sort of shape as the original stills. In addition to the normal shell and tube condensers, Glen Ord also has other condensers which are used in thermal energy storage, The stored energy is then used throughout the distillery, included in the maltings. In other words, the distillery makes efficient use of its own energy. The Black Isle, the area north of Inverness where Glen Ord is located, is famed as being one of the finest sources of barley in all of Scotland. And bearing this in mind, it's not surprising that Glen Ord is one of only a handful of Scottish distilleries that still possesses on-site maltings. At the same time, it also produces malt for other Diageo distilleries such as Talisker, Clynelish, and now Brora. In addition to Black Isle grain, barley from the lowlands is also used for malting. In the past, they also imported grain from Germany or the Czech Republic, but nowadays they only use Scottish barley. In the industrial style big maltings, the grain is soaked in tanks, whereupon the grain begins to germinate. It takes about a day or so for this to occur. And at the end, you can see a small sprout growing from each grain. Then the contents of each of the two soaking tanks are put into a drum where the grain is spread out and rotated. There, the temperature and humidity are controlled and adjusted so that the grain can germinate optimally. It's then laid out on the drying floor where it dries by using hot air heated by hot water from the distillery. And sometimes gas or peat is also used for smoking malt. Drying is done until there is only 5% moisture left in the grain, which stops the germination process, and that takes about 24 hours. Peated malt is produced with a strong 100 parts per million and then mixed with non-peated malt in such a way that the desired smoke content is created. However, the malt used in the production of Glen Ord is totally unpeated. And due to its high level of production, Glen Ord Distillery has a complex of warehouses on site. And they're quite a sight. They've been blackened by decades of evaporated alcohol. Half of the casks used at the distillery are American white oak, and the other half are oler sherry. In total, there are 8 dunnage warehouses at Glen Ord. 3 of them were converted and built into a visitor centre in 2021. The other 5 dunnage warehouses still store the Glen Ord single malt for the Singletons and blends and other Diageo malts from elsewhere in its portfolio. So, Glen Ord whisky. When most bottlings from the North Highland distillery of Glen Ord, which lies just on the Black Isle, most of these bottlings are already gone. The range of official bottlings produced by the distillery did include a 12-year-old, 15-year-old, 18-year-old, 25-year-old, 32-year-old, and a 36-year-old. But these older bottlings are hard to source nowadays. And the key feature of the distillery's official bottlings was the 12-year-old bottling. But now, since 2007, 12-year-old Glen Ord has also been released under Diageo's Singleton brand of malts, orientated towards, in the case of Glen Ord, Singleton of Glen Ord, the Asian market. Independent bottlings performed at the distillery are even harder to come by. Douglas Lang and Signatory Vintage have performed most independent bottlings available on the market today. And Douglas Lang's range of bottlings include an 11, 14, 21-year-old. Signatory's bottlings have been on the younger side, principally featuring a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. But about 80% of the single malt produced at Glen Ord is used in the blending of Dewar's and Johnnie Walker brands. So Glen Ord's new make spirit has aromas of freshly cut grass and light smoke, and water in it brings in just cut hedges. On the mouth, it has a good weight with that grassy privet note, like chewing spring leaves and green pea shoots. And then watered down, it becomes more smoky, and its finish is of fermenting white wine. So I'm going to start off with the old one, Glen Ord, 12-year-old, 43%. Uh, it came in the old cube bottle from the late 1980s, early 1990s, and was available until 2008 in Europe. Then was replaced by the Singleton of Glen Ord bottling, uh, which was only available at the distillery in the UK and widely distributed in Asia. Uh, Back in the 1970s, Glen Ord was heralded as one of the classic Highland single malts and regarded as one of the finest. I did some research and I think this was fully matured in ex-bourbon casks. So this is just a sample I have. Let's see where we go with this one. It's got a nice colour, but I suspect that's not completely natural. Very thin tears, not very much viscosity there at all. So on the nose, I'm getting malt and spices, but there is some vanilla as well. It's very fresh and creamy, quite a classic Highland profile. Honey, caramel, peppermint, and that maltiness, and vanilla, sawdust. There is fruit, it's fruity, ripe fruits. And then you get the vegetal and the plants going back to the new make spirit. And a lot of citrus comes in, lemon and lime. And there is some alcohol noticeable, but it's not punchy. It's got little bits of everything here, a fruity nuttiness, citrus, some floral, but nothing too specific. It's got a good weight, however. We'll try them out. It's quite creamy, quite full of flavours. It's rich, malty, and a little bit salty with vanilla and oak in the background. It's quite a soft vanilla. Fruity, fresh honey. There's a slight sourness to it, but it is fruity and it's citric. And it's got a bit of sparkle, this one. And then you get the vegetal and the greenness. Quite a thick structure. It's quite a soft, easy arrival. Very accessible. And the ethanol is not hitting you too badly. Creamy. And then I get some sherry raisins, which makes me wonder about my statement that it was ex-bourbon, but, well. And the finish, honey lingers on the tongue. It's quite a long and fruity aftertaste. Still sparkling. And you get some licorice accompanying the citrus. Sort of middling to longish finish, soft, bitter, sour, turning into sour cream. It's good age in this whiskey, and some darker notes for it holds on for a while and then it's gone. I'll try 5 drops of water in this. And you know, with water it becomes a little more complex. I get peach, orange, citrus or mint, and there's a light green in the background. That's a malty cereal barley and spiced cinnamon. A little gingerbread, some sweet citrus orange or clementine, and vanilla essence, and a hint of chocolate there. We'll try them out. And that's quite a big arrival for dilution. It's a bit less sweet, peppery spice initially, freshly ground nutmeg and cinnamon powder, ginger nut biscuits, malty cereal barley, toffee and salted caramel. There's a hint of treacle and dark chocolate before lots of orange oil essence, candied peel. It's like a cosmopolitan cocktail with orange zest expressed oil. It's got a long development with citrus, heather, peach, and a touch of banana and cornflakes. Water's made the finish shorter. It's medium short, orange, ginger, toffee, and spice. It's not a very complex, but it is a solid whisky. There's lots of citruses, some green vegetable notes, and ABV just prevents it from getting thin. It's got a nice sparkling mouthfeel and typical older style of malt. And it would be quite easy to drink a few drams of this one. It's not a very complex one, but it's still a classic Highlands malt, which is now discontinued, being replaced by the Singleton expression. And I would say that old bottle of Glen Ord with the green label, if you see a pub serving it, go and get a glass for old time's sake. I think the nose is the richest part. It's a very pleasant dram. So I'm on Nairn's milled oatcakes tonight. Finding milled oatcakes to cleanse my palate. So its replacement was the Singleton of Glen Ord 12-year-old, which is bottled at 40%. So this was Glen Ord revamped for the Japanese and Far East markets. And it's surprisingly hard to find in the UK. I think you'll find it online. But if you go to a whisky shop, it's not always there. I think it's matured in a mix of ex-bourbon and ex-sherry cask. So let's see where we go with this one. And immediately I can see it's darker than its older in the bottle uh, brother. You can see there that's certainly a little darker than the original. Well, maybe, yeah. Again, it'll be better tears in this one, but it's 40%, and it will be chill filtered and it will be coloured. Let's see. And it's completely different. So it starts with orange oil and lots of it. I've got the other one here. And then this one, the new one, you get sort of brandied sherries, blackberry jam, and a sort of elderflower liqueur, strawberry bubblegum, and bananas, not the skins, banana, the inside of the skins. And there's lots of fruit again. But you also get sort of sake and a sort of syrupy, sweet dessert wine, maybe a Tokai, and gummy bears. But then, contrasting all those in the background, you get like human sweat and damp moss. It's like walking over in the flow country over a bog. So let's try them out. On this one, there's fewer fruits on the palate. You do get some banana, lime rind, and maybe some orange zest. Milk chocolate, like the Milky Bar Kid kind of chocolate. And there's lots of granulated sugar, caramel, and brine. And you do get a little farming note showing up from time to time, like hot used hay. And the texture is a little watery in this one. And it makes you wonder what it would be like at 43%, 46% ABV. And the finish is very sweet, sugary, and honey, and there's a little dryness and bitterness in the background. Then that farming note again, cut grass, brine, and a generic citrus note hanging around for a while. I'm going to try 5 drops of water in this one as well. And it's very pungent with lots of citrus, mostly oranges and orange candies too. There's some lighter notes of lemon rind, citrus muffins, pineapple, and vanilla extract in the back. Try them out. And you get oranges again, and whipped butter, flower blossoms, and fresh herbs, maybe oregano. It's quite sweet. And the sweetness continues through the short and rather plain finish. There's a curious mocha note in there. And the orangey bit is mostly pith and pulp. So, were Diageo successful with this brand? Sort of. The nose on this one proved that Glen Ord can generate some fun whiskey. And I've got these two Cadenhead Ords, and I'd like to explore Glen Ord further, but via independent bottlers, I think. So, Easter Ross has some very good whiskey distilleries, besides Dalmore and Glenmorangie. Tannanich and Glen Ord produce a very good distillate. But I think in the case of them, indie bottlings are the way to go due to scarcity of core range and the quality of what indie bottlers are producing. So indie bottlings to discover the true essence of the distillery. For distillery bottlings, I find Balblair hard to beat. As for Glen Ord Old and New, in this case, I think the Glen Ord 12-year-old would be my choice. Thank you for listening.